I'm joined now by the source of constant anguish and consternation for Donald Trump. That's Norm Eisen. Norm, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me back, Brian. And I hope I bring as much amusement and interest to your audience as I do aggravation to Donald Trump.
That's right. Norm, you were yet again the focus of Donald Trump's ire just a couple of days back when he decided that he was going to revoke your security clearance. But what he did isn't exactly what it seems. Can you explain the
Yeah,
irony of this whole move?
yes. Um, for the third time, Donald Trump proclaimed late on Friday that he was revoking my security clearance. Brian, he must take my security clearance away, then turn it back on so he can so he can take it down all over again. First, he weeks ago he said, "I'm taking Norm Eisen's security clearance." Then I was in a thing that Tulsi Gabbard published, and now Donald Trump has done an executive order. But if he thinks he's going to intimidate me by removing my security clearance, there's other provisions in this executive order. I want to demonstrate that that's not going to happen. So I've continued to litigate. Just on Friday, we filed another case challenging his illegal destruction of the Voice of America, our country's premier international broadcast arm that so many people around the world rely on for free and fair news. Yesterday, I filed a massive brief from conservatives, Brian, in that terrible deportation case. Almost 24 conservatives who served in every Republican presidential administration from Nixon to Trump one, saying, how can it be a conservative thing to send innocent people to a black site, a secret prison in another country? That's about the least conservative thing you can do. And then I'll have another big lawsuit coming this week. We just won discovery in our case to protect FBI agents, where we got an order saying Donald Trump can't target those FBI agents. So no wonder he's mad. He's losing and he's lashing out in response.
Do you see the irony in the fact that, okay, Trump is issuing these executive orders that at least in your case, don't actually amount to anything. They're just symbolic. It's just a way for him to throw some red meat to the base, but he's not actually doing anything, although he is giving the illusion that he's doing a lot, which I guess happens. That's a byproduct of just issuing executive orders with words on them over and over and over again to, again, give the illusion that you're doing something, even though there's actually no teeth behind it. Can you, compared to the fact that while he's doing this, the target of his ire, you are filing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit that actually undermines all of his professed priorities?
Well, I'm sure it's an emperor's new clothes situation,
Yeah.
Brian, where he's saying, why do we keep losing these lawsuits? You got to do something about those lawyers. And they say, oh, no, no, sir, no problem. We'll take away Norm's security clearance. Nobody tells him you've already done it twice,
Yeah.
Donald. So, the other thing, reporters were calling me all day Friday. Oh, you're gonna take away your ability to go into federal buildings. But then when you look at the actual executive order, it just says, I shall not go into secure federal buildings unescorted. Well, guess what? When I go to the Pentagon or those other places, you need an escort anyhow.
Yeah.
It's no different than going on. I was on MSNBC earlier today, and there was a very nice young lady who escorted me to the TV studio and then to the buffet so I could have some brunch courtesy of NBC. There's no there. That's what makes the people who are capitulating, bending the knee, kissing the ring. It makes it so needless. But even there, you have Paul Weiss, who bowed down, but Covington and Burling refused to. And Perkins Coie actually went to court and got an injunction. They're defended by Williams and Connolly, one of our nation's most esteemed law firms. So even in that sample set, those who will grovel are a minority. One other funny thing about all this, when they asked Donald Trump if he signed the executive order relating to these illegal deportations, where we filed our brief over the weekend, Judge Jeb Boasberg, Trump said, "What order? I didn't sign any order." I'm
Yeah.
not even sure he knows what he's doing or remembers that he's already stripped my security clearance twice.
All right, Norm, I actually want to talk about some of the cases that are ongoing right now. The government has appealed a number of cases that you've won. So can you talk about the three cases that are being appealed? One is your win, reinstating probationary employees. There are tens of thousands of those. The next one is declaring Trump's gutting of USAID unconstitutional. And finally, the last one is reinstating Susan Grunman, who is the head of the Federal Labor Relations Authority. So can you speak on the appeals that the government is seeking against all of your wins?
Yes, Brian. On the perhaps the best example of this is the probationary employees case. There, we've protected over 20,000 probationary employees across multiple federal agencies. The judge found that the government fired them in an illegal way. It was done at the Office of Personnel Management. Well, that office has no authority to fire people over at the Pentagon or the U.S. Department of Agriculture, any of the other government agencies. So the judge found it illegal. He found that the excuse was a sham. Uh, Government got very agitated about that, took an immediate appeal to the Ninth Circuit, where we're fighting it out. I think the fact findings there are so powerful of government dissimulation, and they failed to put forth any evidence to support their position. I'm feeling confident about that. Second, we had our big win against Elon Musk and Doge, declaring unconstitutional for the first time their activities, in that case, gutting USAID, as Musk said, feeding it to the wood chipper. Congress did not give him the authority to do that. You can't tear up the Constitution, say you do what you want. The executive branch executes. Congress sets those rules. Musk hasn't been approved by Congress. That's a constitutional violation. So there, they've taken an emergency appeal. We're working on it. We're writing it this weekend. And then another case that has really aggravated the government, another win, is where we've been defending the right of Susan Grunman, the head of the Federal Labor Relations Authority. We actually got an order from the court in D.C. that she must return to work, and she is back at work. This FLRA has vitally important responsibilities for working people across the country, defending their prerogatives. So that's those connected to the government. So that's another big win. That case, I think, is headed for the Supreme Court ultimately, because the Trump administration claims that not only Article 1, the legislature can't bind them, but that Article 2 is absolute and they can ignore Article 3. The Supreme Court has said in a case called Humphrey's Executor, you can't fire the heads of these agencies. There's three of these cases percolating. We have one. I think they're all headed for the Supreme Court. And after John Roberts denounced Donald Trump this week, I think Trump's going to have a pretty tough time at the Supreme Court. Judge Mike Ludig, dear friend of mine, has a piece in the New York Times that if Donald Trump takes on the courts, he will lose. And I think that's true.
Norm, I want to dig into something that you said that I found was interesting, and that was the idea of Paul Weiss, the law firm that decided to capitulate to Donald Trump, their decision to do so. And I'm curious your reaction to that in light of the fact not only that other law firms like Covington and Perkins Coie have decided to fight back, which is, the right move in my opinion, but also the fact that, look, you're in court every single week, and not only are you fighting this administration, but you're winning against this administration. And so given the fact that a lot of what Trump is doing is so nakedly, obviously illegal, corrupt, unconstitutional, what do you make of the fact that even still, a lot of these, whether it's law firms like Paul Weiss or media companies like, we've seen ABC News settle frivolous lawsuits. CBS looks to be doing the same. We've seen these tech oligarchs like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg do the same. And so in these instances where not only would it be the right thing to do, not only would it be the definition of integrity to stand up to a budding autocrat, but it's also an easy win because what he's doing isn't legal, isn't constitutional, isn't without corruption. And so what do you make of the fact that we are still seeing some of these entities bend the knee to him when really what they should be doing is fighting and what they could be doing is winning?
I know the Paul Weiss firm very well. I've worked with them for decades. It's one of the most storied law firms, and one of the ones that's the most generous with pro bono help in all of our causes. They made an example of them for that reason.
Yeah.
Same as with Covington and Perkins Coie. They wanted to see who would break. If you'd have asked me, I would have said Paul Weiss as well as I think of Perkins and Covington. Paul Weiss will be the last firm in the country to bow down because I know them and the management so well there. And I really thought so highly of them before this episode. I think I can understand how they see it, but their thinking is wrong. They probably said to themselves, well, we have hundreds, maybe thousands of clients we have a duty to. And if we're in a fight with Donald Trump, we're not going to be able to represent those clients. We're going to hurt the interests of our clients. Number two, we've built an extremely lucrative powerhouse juggernaut of a firm by having people with big books of business come over from the private equity world and the corporate world. Those partners that they assembled would leave. The firm would smash up and become a much smaller firm, much less lucrative firm in a fight with Donald Trump. But Brian, principle can never take a backseat to profit. That's the whole idea of the legal profession. Those I would have cut off my right arm before I made that deal. Those partners just say, if you got to go, you got to go. So you make, the profits per partner come down to $4 or $3 million a year from $7 or $8 million a year. And as for the other clients, you give those clients a choice. They can stick with you or go. I think many would have stuck with Paul Weiss. And I think that client departure factor is overrated. So there's no justifying it and there's no sugarcoating it. Because of my longstanding association, it was so hard for me to write my publisher's note for the Contrarian this week. I do one at the end of the week. But I felt, hey, if I'm going to be tough on Bezos and Zuckerberg and the Washington Post and other institutions that have bowed down, I've got to be honest about Paul Weiss, even though they used to be my friends in a firm that I respect. So I was very blunt and candid that they have betrayed the legal profession. Fortunately, we have Covington, we have Perkins Coie, we have Williams Connolly, we have Kecker Van Ness. That's another firm that's stood up this weekend. Brian, I'll say one last thing. When under all this intense pressure this week that I'm under, and that the legal profession has come under, lawyers and law firms actually stepped up, reached out, and said, we want to help. I got a lot of extra pro bono help this week. So the whole profession is not as craven as the Paul Weiss leadership.
Well, look, I think everybody recognizes right now the bulwark that the judicial branch has presented itself against the executive branch and a cowardly legislative branch these days. So appreciate all the fight that you're bringing to the Trump administration in the courts. Appreciate the fact that you are winning these cases in beyond just bringing this fight, and we'll keep a close eye on what you keep doing as you move these processes forward. Norm, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Brian. Always great to be with you.